Picture this. A seemingly ordinary college student sits in the back row of her criminal justice class, never raising her hand, never drawing attention to herself. Her classmates see her as just another face in the crowd, quiet, unremarkable, forgettable. But when a real murder case stumps local detectives and becomes the subject of their final project, this average student begins connecting dots that seasoned investigators missed. Her analysis is so precise, so methodically brilliant, that it catches everyone off guard. What they don't know is that behind those unassuming eyes lies years of classified military intelligence training, where she learned to see patterns others couldn't, to read between lines that others didn't even know existed. Her professor is about to discover that some students carry secrets far deeper than academic transcripts, and sometimes those secrets can solve the unsolvable. Sarah Martinez had perfected the art of invisibility. In her Criminal Justice 301 class at State University, she chose the same seat every Tuesday and Thursday, third row from the back, 2 seats from the wall, close enough to hear everything, far enough to avoid unwanted attention. Her classmates barely noticed her, which was exactly how she preferred it. They saw a 26-year-old woman with shoulder-length brown hair, always carrying a simple black backpack, never speaking unless directly called upon. What they couldn't see were the years of training that had taught her to observe everything while revealing nothing about herself. Professor Williams was discussing their final project when Sarah's carefully constructed anonymity began to crack. "The Riverside murder case," he announced, clicking through crime scene photos on the projector. 3 months ago, Detective Morrison and his team hit a dead end. Your assignment is to review the evidence and present your analyst. Sis. Sarah's pen stopped moving across her notebook. She'd been taking notes on criminal procedure theory, but now her mind shifted into a different mode entirely, one she hadn't used since her discharge from military intelligence 18 months ago. The case details unfolded on screen. Rebecca Chen, a 32-year-old accountant, found dead in her apartment with no signs of forced entry. The murder weapon, a kitchen knife, belonged to the victim. No fingerprints except Rebecca's, no DNA evidence, no witnesses. The police had investigated her ex-boyfriend, co-workers, and neighbors, but every lead went cold. Sarah's classmates began chattering about obvious suspects and television crime show theories, but she remained silent, her analytical mind already processing information in ways they couldn't imagine. As Professor Williams distributed case files, Sarah felt the familiar tension between her two worlds. For 18 months, she'd worked to become just another college student, hiding the fact that she'd spent 4 years as a signals intelligence analyst with the Army's 504th Military Intelligence Brigade. She decoded enemy communications in Afghanistan, tracked terrorist networks across 3 continents, and identified patterns in seemingly random data that saved countless lives. But civilian life demanded she be ordinary, forgettable, safe. The weight of the case file in her hands triggered muscle memory she'd tried to suppress. Without thinking, she began the systematic approach drilled into her during countless briefings at Fort Gordon. First, timeline establishment. She noted discrepancies in the police report's sequence of events. Then, pattern recognition. Something about the positioning of evidence didn't align with the supposed scenario. Her training kicked in automatically like a dormant program suddenly activated. Sarah's roommate Jennifer often asked why she'd chosen criminal justice when she seemed so disengaged from class discussions. The truth was complicated. After leaving the military, Sarah had struggled to find purpose in civilian careers that felt insignificant compared to national security work. Criminal justice seemed like a way to serve her community without the weight of classified operations, but maintaining her cover meant suppressing the very skills that defined her. Looking at crime scene photos now, Sarah noticed details others missed. The blood spatter pattern suggested a left-handed attacker, but Rebecca Chen's medical records indicated she was right-handed. The apartment's security system showed a brief malfunction 20 minutes before the estimated time of death, not mentioned in the police report. Most telling was the victim's computer, which had been accessed remotely 3 days after her death, something investigators dismissed as automatic software updates. Her pulse quickened as connections formed in her mind. This wasn't random violence or a crime of passion. It was calculated, methodical, professional. The killer had military or law enforcement training, someone who understood evidence collection and digital forensics. Sarah's fingers traced the timeline she'd mentally constructed, seeing the deliberate misdirection that had fooled local police. Every piece of seemingly contradictory evidence suddenly made sense when viewed through the lens of a planned deception. The classroom around her faded as Sarah entered what her commanding officer used to call the zone, that focused state where her analytical abilities peaked. She'd solved more complex puzzles in Afghanistan, tracked more sophisticated criminals across multiple countries, but those victories belonged to Sergeant Martinez, the intelligence analyst with top-secret clearance. This was supposed to be Sarah's new life, where she was nobody special. As class ended and students filed out discussing their weekend plans, Sarah remained seated, staring at the case file. Her classmates saw an impossible mystery that had stumped professional investigators. She saw a solvable puzzle with clear patterns and identifiable perpetrators. The question wasn't whether she could crack this case. She was already halfway there. The question was whether she was ready to stop being invisible and risk exposing the skills she'd worked so hard to hide. Some secrets, she was beginning to realize, were too important to keep buried. Sarah spent the weekend in her apartment, case files spread across her dining table like intelligence briefings from her military days. She'd told Jennifer she was working on a group project, which wasn't entirely false, except her group consisted of analytical techniques learned in classified government facilities. By Sunday evening, she'd reconstructed the crime with precision that would have impressed her former supervising officers at Fort Gordon. The breakthrough came when she cross-referenced Rebecca Chen's financial records with the apartment building's maintenance logs. Rebecca had recently discovered discrepancies in her company's accounts, money being funneled through offshore accounts linked to a shell corporation. The maintenance logs showed unusual after-hours access to the building's server room, where someone had installed equipment to monitor residents' internet traffic. Rebecca wasn't just an accountant, she was an accidental whistleblower who'd stumbled onto a money laundering operation. Sarah's military intelligence training had taught her that the most dangerous criminals were those with institutional knowledge. The killer possessed intimate understanding of police procedures, digital forensics, and surveillance technology. This wasn't street crime, it was corporate assassination disguised as domestic violence. Her analysis revealed a coordinated effort involving at least 3 perpetrators: a hacker who'd monitored Rebecca's activities, an inside contact who'd provided building access, and a professional who'd executed the murder with surgical precision. Tuesday's class arrived with Sarah carrying more than just her usual backpack. She'd prepared a comprehensive brief that would have earned commendation in military intelligence circles. Professor Williams called for group presentations, expecting typical student theories about jealous ex-boyfriends and random burglary attempts. Instead, Sarah rose from her back row seat and approached the front of the classroom with the confidence of someone who'd briefed generals on enemy positions. The Riverside murder wasn't domestic violence, she began, her voice steady and authoritative in a way that immediately commanded attention. Rebecca Chen was eliminated because she discovered a sophisticated money laundering operation using her company's accounts. The classroom fell silent as Sarah methodically dismantled the police investigation's assumptions. She presented timeline reconstructions, digital forensics analysis, and financial pattern recognition that revealed the true scope of the conspiracy. Her classmates stared in amazement as Sarah explained how the killer had used Rebecca's own security habits against her, timing the attack during her nightly routine, using her kitchen knife to suggest spontaneous violence, then manipulating digital evidence to create false alibis. The remote computer access wasn't accidental. It was the perpetrator retrieving incriminating files that Rebecca had discovered. Every detail the police concided. Red Random was actually part of a carefully orchestrated cover-up. Professor Williams interrupted her presentation, his expression shifting from academic curiosity to genuine concern. Sarah, this level of analysis, where did you learn these investigative techniques? The question she'd been dreading finally arrived, but Sarah realized she was past the point of maintaining her cover. The case demanded the truth, just as her military service once demanded complete honesty in intelligence reports. I spent 4 years as a signals intelligence analyst with the 504th Military Intelligence Brigade, she replied, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to delivering critical briefings. I've tracked terrorist financing networks and analyzed enemy communication patterns. This case follows the same methodological signatures I've seen in organized criminal operations overseas. The classroom erupted in whispers as her classmates processed this revelation about the quiet student they'd barely noticed. Professor Williams immediately contacted Detective Morrison, who arrived within an hour to review Sarah's analysis. The detective's skepticism evaporated as she walked him through her reconstruction of the crime. Her identification of the shell corporation led to frozen assets totaling over $2 million. The surveillance equipment she'd identified in the building's server room provided digital fingerprints that traced back to a private security firm with connections to organized crime. Within 48 hours, Sarah's analysis had transformed a cold case into an active federal investigation. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit confirmed her money laundering theories and arrested 3 suspects based on her intelligence brief. Detective Morrison publicly credited her work, calling it the most thorough criminal analysis I've encountered in 23 years. Of law enforcement. Her classmates' perception of Sarah changed overnight. The invisible student became the subject of respectful curiosity and genuine admiration. They began approaching her with questions about military service, intelligence work, and the skills she'd developed overseas. Jennifer finally understood why her quiet roommate had seemed overqualified for civilian college life. She'd been trained to solve problems that most people couldn't even comprehend. Sarah realized she'd been hiding not just her military background, but her true potential for making a difference. The case had reminded her why she'd chosen intelligence work originally, not for the classified operations or military prestige, but for the satisfaction of protecting innocent people by outsmarting dangerous criminals. Her transition to civilian life didn't have to mean abandoning the skills that defined her. It meant finding new ways to serve her community with the same dedication she'd shown her country. Sarah Martinez's story reminds us that heroes don't always wear uniforms or carry visible badges of honor. Sometimes they sit quietly in college classrooms, having traded military intelligence briefings for criminal justice textbooks, carrying skills and experiences that most of us can barely imagine. Her 4 years with the 504th Military Intelligence Brigade had prepared her for challenges far greater than final exams. But it was her willingness to step forward when justice demanded action that truly defined her character. The Riverside murder case became a turning point not just for Rebecca Chen's family, who finally received the justice they deserved, but for Sarah herself. She discovered that serving her country hadn't ended with her military discharge. It had simply evolved into serving her community with the same analytical precision and unwavering dedication that had made her an exceptional intelligence analyst. Today, Sarah works as a consultant with federal law enforcement agencies, bridging the gap between military intelligence techniques and civilian criminal investigations. Her professor, Detective Morrison, and the FBI agents who worked the case all credit her unique perspective with revolutionizing how they approach complex financial crimes. But perhaps most importantly, her classmates learned that extraordinary people often hide in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal the depth of their capabilities and the strength of their character. The men and women who serve in military intelligence operations dedicate their lives to protecting others, often without recognition or public acknowledgement. Their training teaches them to see patterns others miss, to think several steps ahead of adversaries, and to remain calm under pressure that would overwhelm most civilians. When they transition to civilian life, they carry these skills forward, continuing to serve in ways both visible and invisible. If Sarah's story has inspired you, if you've been moved by this reminder that heroes walk among us every day, please subscribe to our channel for more stories honoring the courage and dedication of our military veterans. Their service doesn't end when they hang up their uniforms. It continues in classrooms, offices, and communities across our nation, making all of us safer through their quiet vigilance and unwavering commitment to justice. These are the stories that deserve to be told. And these are the heroes who deserve our recognition and gratitude.